Good morning, everyone. I'll call to order the meeting of the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents and ask the Secretary to please read the roll.
Regent Bartel? Here. Regent Bradley?
Here.
Regent Burmaster? Here. Regent Conley-Kiesler? Regent Crane? Regent Dean? Regent Davis?
Here.
Regent Drew? Regent Salvo?
Here.
Regent Loftus? Regent Opkenor?
Here.
Jose, this is Mary Keene. I'm also on.
Okay.
I can,
Got her. Okay. Regent
I want
Smith?
to.
Regent Smith?
Here.
Regent Spector? Regent Thomas? Here. Regent Vasquez? Regent Walsh? Regent Womack? A quorum is present.
Thank you. Mary Keene, can you hear us?
Hear me?
I feel like a Verizon phone commercial. Well, we'll proceed. Judy, do you know if is there just Mary who is going to try to join us by phone?
Jose Vasquez was going to try.
That's Jose.
Okay. Jose and Mary, we can hear you intermittently. We'll continue with our meeting.
Also.
Good. The minutes of our November 6th meeting were distributed. Could I have a motion for their approval? Second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the minutes? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? They're approved. You received the Wisconsin Technical College System Board report in your materials. Any questions on those? And then you also received other items electronically. We'll proceed to my report. I have a couple of items. First of all, this is our first visit at UW-La Crosse, I believe, since 8 years ago. And I think we all ought to give a round of applause to all the people who have worked so hard to make our stay here very comfortable and enjoyable. We really appreciate the effort, and we realize all the work that is required when we decide to come and visit a campus. It's very worth it to us to be able to see firsthand what is going on at a campus, and also to be able to have time to talk with faculty members and the students. And the UW-La Crosse students have demonstrated such a concern about our work on their behalf. And Chancellor Gao, you can take great pride, and I know you do. You just have a great group of students. We appreciate that. There are some new faces and new leadership at the state capitol, and there are more changes coming. President Riley and I are now scheduling meetings with the legislative leaders. Our first meeting is going to be with the new Assembly Speaker-elect Mike Sheridan of Janesville. We're going to be meeting with him on December 18th. And we've been reaching out to Democrats and Republicans at the state capitol, where there have been appointments made to the Joint Finance Committee. We'll be waiting for appointments to the education and other committees that impact the UW system. And we'll continue with the efforts that we started a couple of years ago to have periodic meetings with legislative leadership to explain what we're trying to do on behalf of the state, and just have some candid moments with them to be able to, we invite them to ask questions of us also, to make sure that we're all on the same page as a public institution trying to do our job to keep Wisconsin going. Tomorrow, I believe it's 7 UW system campuses are going to be gathering to demonstrate how they're working to move forward to meet tomorrow's demands in our knowledge economy. They're going to be gathering for the opening of the new Nanotechnology Center for Collaborative Research and Development. That's going to be opening at UW-Platteville tomorrow. That center is going to bring together innovation, great minds and resources, and accelerating the transformation of knowledge into leading-edge jobs and economic vitality in our state. It's going to link faculty from several campuses. I believe the number is 7. But not only the members of the campuses, but they'll also be working with entrepreneurs and private companies in Wisconsin. They'll be serving as a catalyst for applied research and technology transfer, and also providing an opportunity for students to experience firsthand the fundamental steps of innovation, including market analysis, technology strategy, and business planning. UW-Platteville's new center is just another instance of how the UW system is working with the larger community to leverage regional economic growth and workforce development. Another example of how the UW system is working to build for the future was showcased in a conference that was held in Madison a couple of weeks ago. The conference was Liberal Education, a Unifying Mission for the 21st Century University. That was jointly sponsored by the UW system and SAGLA, our system advisory group on the liberal arts. That conference focused attention on the liberal education initiative that you've been hearing about, called LEAP, Liberal Education in America's Promise, which we have been involved with. You'll recall that we are a pilot partner in moving the national LEAP campaign forward. Both President Riley and I spoke at that conference, and other speakers included Wisconsin's Lieutenant Governor Barbara Lawton and Carol Gary Schneider, who is president of the American Association of Colleges and Universities. There were more than 130 faculty members and staff members from our various institutions assembled to discuss the kinds of learning that is essential for our students, and this ties in directly with our first action step of our strategic plan, which the Education Committee took action on yesterday, and we'll hear a report about. I just want to share a couple of highlights of our work on this liberal education initiative in Wisconsin. We are part of an AAC&U grant that is funded by the Carnegie Corporation to work on general education reform, a pretty big topic. It's going to focus in particular on underserved students. It's called Give Students a Compass, and it brings together not only the UW system, but also the California state system and the Oregon University system in an effort to transform undergraduate teaching and learning. This really is cutting-edge work on a national scale, and the UW system is right in the center of it. To promote these efforts, President Riley has convened a group together with Lieutenant Governor Lawton that brings together policymakers from education, government, media, business, and nonprofit sectors to provide leadership in rallying the public behind the value of this 21st century education. This work is about renewing Wisconsin's understanding and the value that it puts on higher education as a public good. So both of these efforts, the new Nanotechnology Center at UW-Platteville and the Liberal Education Initiative, are directly related to our growth agenda for Wisconsin. Finally, I just wanted to mention that we're making plans for a special meeting, probably January 16th. I hope we can do this by video conference or telephone conferencing. I expect that we will have the recommendations from the Regent selection committees for UW River Falls and UW Green Bay. So we should take action on those in the month of January. So if you could just hold open the afternoon of January 16th, and we'll try to get information to you as soon as possible on whether we're able to do that by either telephone conference call or video conferencing. So that concludes my report, and I'll call upon President Riley.
Thank Thank you, President Bradley. Good morning, everybody. Good to see you, and best wishes for the holiday season to all of you and your families. One of the things that we're all confronting this holiday season is the economic situation that we find ourselves in. I think we all recognize we're facing a very serious crisis that continues to unfold. We've said this before, and I'll say it here again. We recognize as the University of Wisconsin that we're all in this together with all other folks in the state. We know that students and families will be struggling.
Excuse me, Mark and Kevin.
Yes.
Could the microphone be put a little closer to Kevin so we can hear it a little bit better?
Not unless I implant it, but it's pretty close, Mary.
Okay.
I'll
Just thought I'd ask.
try to speak up.
I'm sorry, I know you don't have much voice.
That's all
Do the
right.
best you can. Thank you.
Can you hear now?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I was saying that we recognize that students and families will be having an especially hard time balancing their checkbooks. We're aware of that. We realize that state leaders will be challenged to preserve core public services. So with all of that in our minds, we want to say to folks that we'll do our part to address the current budgetary crisis. We've already, without at this point still knowing exactly what our share of this problem will be, we've taken several steps to step up to the plate. Back in October, I directed the chancellors around the system to approve all new hires themselves directly and make a decision in doing that whether each hire was essential to the university's mission at that time. Just last week, I directed chancellors to monitor and approve all out-of-state travel funded by state tax dollars or tuition. Under that directive, before approving a travel request, chancellors have to determine if the trip is essential to the employee's duties, whether canceling the trip would incur penalties. Our faculty and staff, of course, will be encouraged in that envelope to explore other avenues to stay involved, like teleconferences, video conferences. We do recognize the need for continuing professional development in the knowledge business that we are in. We're also looking at some other longer range efforts to maximize scarce resources. One such initiative which we're starting is to focus on the feasibility of a 3-year baccalaureate program at selected UW system campuses. That accelerated degree structure, we think, could lower educational costs for well-prepared students who wanted to pursue it. Not for everybody, but for some who wanted to pursue it. And we think it could save money for the university in the long run as well, and for taxpayers. We could use more advanced placement courses to be credited toward the degree, more online class work, more summer study. So I've asked Senior Vice President Martin and Associate Vice President Stephen Collison to work with interested faculty and academic leaders to determine how such an approach might work, at the same time preserving the content and quality of a UW degree within a telescope time frame. Some of you, I think, are aware that we mentioned this at the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee meeting yesterday, that in Europe, under the Bologna process, where the higher education communities across 45 or so countries in Europe are coming together to try to, as they like to call it, rationalize their higher ed systems across state borders. They've taken a number of steps in that direction, one of which is to agree on a 3-year baccalaureate format in Europe. So we're going to take a close look at what they're doing and how they're doing it. We have other examples in the United States that we'll take a close look at too. We continue to have success. I just wanted to remind people of this because this does continue to save us money in tough times. The effort that was noted in a recent Change article, which is a national magazine on higher ed, an article by Jane Wellman, who's the executive director of the Delta Project on Post-Secondary Cost, Productivity, and Accountability. In her article, Dr. Wellman says this, and I quote, "The UW system was able to decrease credits accumulated for the bachelor's degree from an average of 145 in 1994 to 135 in 2004 for savings in the per unit cost of the degree of 7%. The savings to the state from these increases in productivity opened up an additional 12,000 seats in the UW system. The reduction in credits also meant that students were able to complete their degree in less time, shaving the better part of one semester off their time to degree. The direct savings to the students from not having to pay the additional semester of tuition and fees was close to $3,000 per student, well above the cost of, for instance, a 5% tuition increase and more than half the amount of the maximum Pell Grant for the neediest students, unquote. So it was nice to get that recognition in a national publication. I've also asked our campus provost to examine our system's current array of degree granting programs. Their task will be to analyze enrollment and graduation data for low enrollment programs across the 26 UW system campuses and consider how these programs might be realigned to make better use of resources while continuing to support students and workforce needs in the state. So we are undertaking that effort as well. These are all important measures, I think, and only part of what will have to be, we know, broad collaborative efforts to address the economic challenges that are facing us. As responsible citizens and partners in building our state's future, we have to consider opportunities for the UW system campuses to retool for the changing marketplace. Other Wisconsin organizations are being forced to adapt, and our university is not immune from that imperative. At the same time, and I can't emphasize this enough, we must not overlook our overall mission, that is to produce college-educated citizens who are prepared to succeed in the innovation economy and, I should add, prepared to weather the kinds of rough rides that you get in any economy like we're having right now. A couple of us were talking at breakfast. Regent Bartell mentioned that he had heard, and I did too, on CNN yesterday morning and this morning, that if you have a bachelor's degree right now with all the unemployment problems we're starting to have, if you have a bachelor's degree, you're half as likely to be unemployed as somebody who doesn't have a bachelor's degree. The unemployment rate for those without a bachelor's degree is now twice that of those who hold a baccalaureate. So again, it's a good reminder of the value of what we do for our students and families and for the state, and how if we're going to ride through this economic storm successfully, we need more highly educated people, not fewer. So we will do our part to balance the state budget, and while we're doing that, we'll remain focused on the state's critical educational needs. By carefully maintaining our capacity to enroll and educate students, to help create the new industries and jobs of the future, to enhance life in local communities all over Wisconsin, we'll function as one of the state's key engines of recovery and renewal. We'll continue to advance the growth agenda as our vision for the state's prosperous future and articulate how what I hope is now the familiar triumvirate of growing people, growing jobs, and growing communities will benefit everybody. We have a new tool, by the way, in spreading that message. We recently developed and completed a brand new growth agenda for Wisconsin brochure. There are copies of this in your red folders in front of you this morning. It's a green and white brochure you'll find in there, which is a succinct explanation of what the growth agenda is and why it's important. So I hope you'll find that useful, and we'll be distributing it very, very widely. With that segue, I'd like to ask Senior Vice President Martin to provide us now with an update on the growth agenda action steps in the charge that she's been leading to implement what came out of our strategic planning process. Rebecca.
Good morning. In your folders also is a progress report on all 11 growth agenda action steps, which we have been following now for, I guess, about 10 months, and let me give you a little bit more information on a few of them. Number 7, collaborate with the PK-12 community to enrich college preparation, is something that we have been working on closely with the provosts for some time. We've decided to focus our initial efforts on working collaboratively with the Wisconsin Technical colleges, independent colleges, and the PK-12 community to address math preparation for Wisconsin students as they progress from school to college and beyond, because we've learned through the equity scorecard and other efforts that we've undertaken the last several years that math is such a key to college success that if we can bring students in already well prepared, we have a much better chance of retaining them and having them successfully graduate. We're beginning with identifying competencies needed for college preparation and working to align those with high school academic standards. This work is closely connected to a number of our ongoing initiatives, the American Diploma Project, which I've been very pleased to be working in partnership with Libby in the leadership of that project for the state, the Early Math Placement Test, which is a program that we've been working on for some time and had funds in the last biennium to advance that in our high schools. Our federally funded project to enhance assessment of teacher preparation in mathematics, funded through the FIPSE program, and the Teacher Education Initiative funded in the FY 2007-2009 DIN. In terms of this specific focus on math, we are in the process of putting together a team of math faculty from the UW system, the technical colleges, independent colleges, and high schools to identify the competencies that students should master in order to be successful in entry-level college math courses, thus reducing the need for math remediation once they arrive at college. The early math placement test informs high school students about their level of math preparation and helps identify what math courses they should take prior to graduation that will best prepare them for college math. We have approximately 50 high schools participating in the pilot test for this year, and we're looking at implementing this statewide in the fall of 2009. Finally, we are planning a system-wide or perhaps a statewide event that will bring together college faculty and high school teachers to share best practices in teaching math sometime next year, because we know we've got some wonderful teachers out there, and we believe that there's some best practices that we can all learn from each other and spread the good teaching across our entire system in this key area. Number 11, grow need-based financial aid. We are just getting started, but we wanted you to know that we've convened a system-wide working group to begin development of the implementation plan. We have dedicated additional staff resources to further shape and manage this initiative, and we will have an individual working directly with foundation and institution leaders, as well as with the system-wide group. We're collecting data from each institution on current and planned need-based financial aid campaigns, and campuses are continuing to prioritize and raise more private need-based financial aid resources, even in this difficult economic environment. And I think that, as Kevin mentioned, this is needed now more than ever, and so it's important that we have this clearly on our list. Finally, we've completed another action step. Number 1, commit to a coherent set of learning outcomes for all UW baccalaureate graduates, and Regent Davis will bring a resolution on this matter forward as part of her report from the Education Committee. I think that's all I have, unless you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Oh, I did have a question.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I did have a question. Of the 50 high schools in the pilot, how many of them are from Milwaukee?
I don't know that. Is Larry Rubin here? He's the one who's working directly on that.
Okay, just let me...
We'll let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Right back to President Bradley to introduce a special guest who I think has arrived.
Yes, I would like to have the Board of Regents give a warm welcome to Congressman Ron Kine, the same warm welcome that Kevin and I get every time we are in Washington visiting Congressman Kine. Welcome, Congressman Kine.
I was just begging for a couple of minutes here, but I just wanted to stop by real quick and welcome the Board of Regents to God's country, to western Wisconsin, and to one of the stars of our university constellation here in Wisconsin, UW-La. And I really do commend Chancellor Gao with the leadership that he's provided the university and the community, and he's really been a breath of fresh air here. This might fall under the category of misery loves company, and that's why I wanted to be here with you today, because I don't know if there's going to be any greater job to do over the next 2 years and the next biennium than what you have to do here as Board of Regents. Obviously, we got our hands full out in Washington, 2 wars overseas, an economic meltdown at home, a budget situation that probably looks worse than what we have here in the state, and that's going to pose some great challenges as far as the priority of higher education in our nation and here in our state. But I also see some opportunities, and working with you and with the university community, I think we could take advantage of certain areas. We finally were able to put to bed the long process of reauthorizing the higher education bill this year. Now comes the difficult task of funding it. And given the budget shortfalls and all the bailouts that we have going on out in Washington, that's going to pose a unique challenge in the upcoming fiscal year. We do have help on that front, however, with Dave Obie's position as chair of the Appropriations Committee and how competitive our universities have been in regards to the grant process out in Washington. We have a stimulus package coming up, and I'm going to try to provide some leadership and see if I can convince my colleagues in the leadership in Washington that this would be a nice time to move forward on the innovation agenda, the new American Competitiveness Act that we passed a little over a year ago. Haven't funded it yet in this next year, but this is, emphasizing those key fields of study of math, science, engineering, technology, also basic and applied research through the NIH and NSF and various other departments. And if we can get that up and going, I see our university system uniquely positioned to be able to take advantage of a lot of that additional federal funding. And quite frankly, it's something that we should be doing whether there's a recession or not, whether it be a part of a stimulus package or not. But this might be an appropriate vehicle to move forward on that front. But I'm very proud of the university presence that we have here in western Wisconsin. I'm sure Brent is very much aware, given that he's from the area. But many people throughout the state aren't aware that western Wisconsin really is the mecca of higher education here in Wisconsin, with 5 of the state universities, and of course the 2-year campus at Richland Center. You throw in the 4 technical colleges and their campuses spread out. I have more undergraduates here in western Wisconsin in this congressional district than Tammy Baldwin has with UW-Madison in Madison. And they are a tremendous value to our way of life and economic development, the spin-off opportunities that we see here in western Wisconsin. The work that's being done down at Platteville, here at UW-Yale, and of course River Falls, Stout, and Eau Claire up north, they're all, I think, doing very interesting and innovative things in order to address the workforce challenges that we have in the state, the competitive challenge that we have throughout the country. And I think it's going to be one of the big issues and one of the tough issues that the board will have to wrestle with in this next biennium and the years ahead, is how are we going to be able to continue to attract and recruit and retain talent in light of the tough competitive environment that exists out there. And recently we've seen 5 great chancellors leave the university system for a variety of reasons. And it's a wake-up call. And I think we need to get that message out. And I think all of us will have a role to help get that message out to the people of Wisconsin. Now, we've got something great here, but it's not guaranteed that it's going to remain great as we move forward. And balancing that with the budget crunch that we're going to see in Madison and also out in Washington, I think is going to be one of the great challenges of the day. And we'd hate to see the opportunity for access to higher education and the quality of higher education that we have in the state suffer as a consequence. So our work is cut out for us. A growing economy solves a lot of problems. We don't have that right now. Obviously, we're all aware of the recent jobs report that came out, 533,000 in the last month alone. That's over 1.2 million in the last 3 months. It's like, stop piling on here. We've had enough. But it's probably going to take a little while before we straighten out the economic challenge that we have both here and abroad and get things growing again. And then that will help solve a lot of problems. So I think the name of the game now over the next year or 2 is going to be priority. Now, what are we going to prioritize as a nation in order to make sure that we're still laying that foundation for tremendous growth opportunity both in this state and throughout the country? And that's where I see the innovation agenda playing a very, very important role. So good luck. I know you have your plates full, you have your hands full, and I don't envy your position, although it doesn't look much easier out in Washington these days as well. I'll be returning on Monday. We'll be deliberating and debating the auto industry situation and whether anything can be done to assist there in the short and in the long run. But the list is growing, and the demand is great, and there are equally daunting challenges that we see on the horizon. So we welcome you here to UW-Yale on campus. Thank you for coming over and paying attention to this side of the state. I want to just conclude by commending the team that you've had representing you and the work that Chris Andrews has been. Where did Chris run off to? The work that she's been doing in keeping us all very well informed out in Washington. She really has been providing an invaluable service, letting us know what's taking place, what you're wrestling with, and what we need to stay focused on in Washington during these trying times. So thank you. Thank you all for being here. Glad to offer a little bit of insight on what might be coming up and what opportunities we can do to try to partner together and continue to build what I think is one of the great assets that we truly have here in the state, and that's our education system and the higher education system in particular. Thank you all. I don't know if you want to question or
Congressman Kine said that he would be able to stay for a couple of minutes if there were any questions of him.
Only if they're easy. Great.
Regent Phil.
Education, but because you're here, it's just a great opportunity. Thank you for doing that. But you mentioned the auto industry. I'd be curious what your thoughts are about it.
Yeah, he was asking about the auto industry and what might be coming up. Obviously, they're back in Washington this week for testimony to lay out their restructured plans. If everyone wants a casebook example of a bad PR gambit, just look back a couple of weeks ago when they flew to Washington all on their Lear jets asking for assistance from the American taxpayer. Didn't go over very well. But the threshold of proof is very high for them, obviously, and there's a lot of skeptical members right now, especially in the Senate. And we saw a lot of that yesterday, with the tough questions being asked. And no question the auto industry plays a vital role for economic growth and manufacturing in this country. And when you think about 1 out of every 10 jobs is either directly or indirectly related to the auto industry, this is more than just Detroit. We're talking about are the big three. I mean, this is every one of us and probably every main street in America that would be adversely affected if they fail and go under. Just about a week ago, we had one of the larger auto parts manufacturers in this district down in Prairie du Chien announce a 94-person layoff out of 240 because of what's happening in the auto industry. Just had lunch with the auto dealers here in town a couple of days ago to get an assessment from them, and it does look bleak. And if there's going to be a bridge loan, and that's what everyone's talking about right now, it has to be a bridge to somewhere, not a bridge to nowhere. And that's what we need, greater assurance, that we're not throwing good money after bad, that they've got a plan in place that could turn this around, make them more competitive, and start producing products that the American people want again. And that's really the big challenge that they're facing. We've been encouraged with a lot of concessions that they've been showing in recent weeks. UAW came back to the table and offered a huge concession plan, which shows me that the workers there are doing everything they can to try to help their companies be viable and to survive. And whether it's going to be enough here in the short term remains to be seen. I'm not making any predictions. The Senate's going to try to bring something up early next week. If they're successful in finding the votes, then I feel a little more confident that the House will move similarly on some form of bridge loan. But we're still waiting for the White House to give us a signal, and they've been eerily quiet throughout all this. So at the end of the day, even if the Congress decides to move, I mean, the President's going to have to be on board with any plan, and they're really not saying much right now. Yep.
Libby?
Libby.
Hi, Congressman.
Libby, I was remiss in not thanking you for your service, too.
Thank
We're all aware of your announced retirement or moving on to better
Not
things, and you've
retiring.
done such a... Well, right. You're too young for that, and we need your talents and your energy, but you've done a marvelous job, and we thank you for your service.
Thank you, Congressman. Given that President-elect Obama had college access so predominantly in his education agenda, do you think there's any hope that we could see financial aid in an economic stimulus package?
Yeah, that's a great question, and right now we're just starting to talk amongst each other and also getting a lot of ideas, and Governor Doyle and the other governors were just in this past week meeting with President-elect Obama. Education was one of the issues that was raised, and obviously a lot of light bulbs were going on at that point. But there's always been this kind of framework of doing these short-term stimulus. They have to be targeted short-term and limited as far as the spending that's involved, because this is all deficit financing, folks. I mean, this is all borrowed money, and it's mainly coming from China. And so how deep do we want to dig the hole for our children and grandchildren at the end of the day, too? And that has to weigh into consideration. And whether we can convince enough of our colleagues, and I'm all on board, to see if we can try to fully fund the reauthorization levels of the higher ed bill that we just passed. The significant increase with Pell Grant and the availability of Pell Grant scholarships year-long right now is a step in the right direction. But it's all pretty meaningless if the funding doesn't follow the authorization levels now, and that's going to be the great challenge. That with TRIO and Gear Up and Upward Bound and the other programs that are targeted to high-need students are ones that hopefully we can work in, whether it's through the normal budget process. We still have to pass a budget in January for this upcoming fiscal year, or whether it's through the stimulus vehicle. We're going to have probably 2 kicks at the can here to increase funding in those areas. Yep.
Regent Loftus.
Hi.
Can you talk a little bit about the new GI Bill and prospects for it in the future? I think that's something this system is looking at to help us through some tough times, because now we have a number of veterans, although we're a little short on funding for them in our budget.
Well, it's a great issue, and it's a very important point, because obviously we saw the benefits of the GI Bill that stemmed from the Second World War and what that meant to the nation, and how that set us on the path of sustainable growth for many decades because of the workforce development that brought. And I think we have another opportunity, and I was very proud that we were able to move in a bipartisan fashion in getting the recent GI Bill done. The need is there, and it makes sense as far as the future investment of where we're going as a nation. We also dealt with that somewhat in the higher ed bill. There were provisions and programs in the higher ed bill to address the needs of veterans coming home today from service. And there are many. And one of the unfortunate consequences of the repeated deployments that we've had in Iraq and Afghanistan is some of our veterans coming home now are finding it difficult for career advancement or for skills enhancement because of the time that they spent away from their jobs and their occupation. So I think we have an opportunity with the recently passed GI Bill to be able to expand that access to more of our veterans and make sure that they have the financial means to be able to go on, enter school, get a degree or an advanced degree, or maybe more specific targeting of a skill set that they might need in order to address their career advancement. So the Obama administration will obviously have to play a crucial role with the first budget that they submit with the newly enacted GI Bill and how much funding will be dedicated to that. But again, we do have some areas in the reauthorized higher ed bill that addresses veterans' needs too, so we're going to be paying very close attention to that.
Any other questions? Well, if not, thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you for the opportunity. Enjoy your stay here.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, well, let me continue with my report by sharing some good news items from around the system. As college-bound teens all around the state are biting their nails in anxiety about taking the dreaded ACT and SAT exams, they should know that help is on the way. Know How to Go Wisconsin is now offering free online test preparation materials to Wisconsin students with easy-to-use tutorials and interactive practice sessions. The program even includes a vocabulary builder that contains more than 2,000 words and has the capability of adapting to each student's ability level. Maybe some of us who like to do crossword puzzles will want to check out that feature of the Know How to Go website. The Know How to Go program, which was launched in November of 2007, is a partnership between the University of Wisconsin system, the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, the Wisconsin Technical College System, and the Wisconsin Association of Independent Colleges and Universities. It's designed to help students turn their dreams of college into reality by providing them with the resources they need to follow that path. The new test prep feature is made possible through a College Access Challenge grant from the U.S. Department of Education. At UW-Oshkosh, historians have unveiled a major new multimedia exhibit on the student demonstrations they are known as Black Thursday. Black Thursday, as many of you know, took place on the Oshkosh campus back in November of 1968, November 21st, 1968. On that day, African-American students attending Wisconsin State University, Oshkosh, as it was then called, were involved in demonstrations that resulted in mass arrests and the expulsion of 94 students. Such demonstrations were happening all over the country in 1968, of course, but this was one of the first to occur in Wisconsin. As described by UW-Oshkosh professor Stephen Kircher, who led the team that developed the project, quote, "Many people in the region felt that they were immune to the struggles happening elsewhere, but Black Thursday proved that was not so." Nearly 100 former students, faculty, staff, law enforcement, and community members were interviewed as part of this project. The exhibit, which should challenge people to consider the complex legacy of racial division in Wisconsin, is part of the university's attempt to have us see our history more clearly and form our future together more wisely. UW-Milwaukee hosted its first ever Panther Family Weekend back in October, and nearly 700 parents, grandparents, siblings, and other family members showed up to get involved. Visitors were treated to a traditional Milwaukee fish fry, a performance by Comedy Sports, free films in the Student Union, a men's soccer game, and the highlight of the day, breakfast with Chancellor Santiago. Although maybe the Comedy Sports piece was a little bigger thing, Carlos said. Also in Milwaukee, the university's innovative Life Impact program for disadvantaged students with children of their own has received a Program Achievement Award from the state of Wisconsin. The Life Impact program, which is a partnership with the Jane Bradley Pettit Foundation, aims to help disadvantaged student parents complete their educations and move into family-supporting careers. And this is an appropriate thing to be calling to your attention after we had the wonderful story of the student parent that we saw yesterday in the video that Joe and his colleagues prepared for us. 39 students are currently enrolled in the program, and the State Council on Affirmative Action and the Office of State Employment Relations presented the award to Milwaukee in October. So congratulations to Chancellor Santiago and his colleagues on that. UW-Eau Claire has been recognized by the Chronicle of Higher Education as one of the top producing schools for the number of students receiving Fulbright Fellowship grants this year. UW-Eau Claire had 2 students receive fellowships out of its 5 applicants, placing the university among the top 20 nationally among master's institutions. UW-Madison, with 19 students earning fellowships out of 76 applicants, placed in the top 10 for U.S. research institutions. The Fulbright Fellowship and International Exchange Program, which started back in 1946, is considered one of the most successful fellowship programs that we have. About 1,500 students were involved in the program this year. So we congratulate all the worthy Wisconsin winners of the Fulbright Fellowships. UW-Whitewater continues to be a real force in teacher education in the state, turning out the most teachers in the UW system, according to the latest Teacher Supply and Demand Analysis Report. The Department of Public Instruction ranks UW-Whitewater #1 in the state among the 13 public 4-year and above universities with 479 teacher education graduates in 2006-2007. Of those 479 graduates, 402 were new teachers, also the most in the UW system. UW Superior senior Mae Gibson recently returned from New York City, where she had the opportunity to meet with Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel, somebody else whose photo appeared yesterday too in one of the videos, a Holocaust survivor and noted author and educator. Mae was the guest of the Elie Wiesel Foundation after winning the foundation's Humanity Prize in Ethics essay contest. Excuse me. The annual competition challenges college students to analyze ethical issues confronting them in a personal 4,000-word essay. For her essay, God and Our Ethics, the English major will also receive a $5,000 scholarship. So congratulations to her and to UW Superior. Finally, UW Colleges and Extension Chancellor David Wilson and Kern Family Foundation President James Rahn recently announced the expansion of the 4-H Gateway Academy to 20 sites, doubling last year's number. This expansion provides the potential to reach 500 middle schoolers around the state next summer. The Academy's day camps for students going into grades 7, 8, and 9 are designed to inspire them to explore science, technology, engineering, and math, the STEM disciplines, which we've already heard about this morning, and to consider careers in those fields. As Chancellor Wilson noted, if Wisconsin is to remain a competitive force in the economy and in education, it must provide numerous widespread opportunities for our young people to develop their science, technology, engineering, and math interests and skills. And really finally, let me conclude with this note also from Chancellor Wilson. After lots of efforts on his part to get tickets to the Obama inauguration, he found that 2 of his students from UW-Manitowoc, unlike him, have been able to get tickets. They were notified by Congressman Petrie's office that they will receive tickets for the inauguration on January 20th, so congratulations to Brendan Best and Zach Fowle from UW-Manitowoc for getting those tickets. And I want to point out to Chancellor Wilson that it would be considered unethical behavior by a chancellor if he were to strong-arm a ticket away from one of those students. That concludes my report. President Brad.
Okay. Thank you, President Riley. You know, in this room, there are lots of groups. The whole room is a group. The regents represent a group, the chancellors are a group, the faculty and staff are a group, our visitors are a group, even the cameramen are a group. And the last thing Congressman Kynes said to me is, good luck with this group. So you can draw your own conclusions. Now I'd call upon Regent Danae Davis, the chair of the Education Committee, to give us the Education Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm pleased to provide two summaries, the first for yesterday's joint meeting of the Education and Business Finance and Audit Committees, and then following that, a summary of yesterday's Education Committee. The Education, Business Finance, and Audit Committees came together to take action on the second five-year plan for the Wisconsin Partnership Program. We heard an excellent presentation from Dean Robert Golden of the UW School of Medicine and Public Health. Dean Golden shared with us the organizational and governance structure of the program and the process followed in developing its second five-year plan covering the years 2009 through 2014. We found it helpful that he reviewed the actual responsibilities of this board with respect to the Wisconsin Partnership Program. The Board of Regents created the OAK, the Oversight and Advisory Committee, which, true to its name, has the most significant oversight role for the program, as well as a programming role. We continue to approve appointments of new members and the bylaws for OAK, as the committee is known. We also review and approve five-year plans, as we did with the first five-year plan in 2003, and yesterday with the second. We review and accept annual reports, and a program and financial audit will be done of the program beginning in early 2009, and we'll review that as well. Over the last 5 years, we have been informed of the significant contributions the program has made, both to the health of the state of Wisconsin and towards achieving a fully integrated School of Medicine and Public Health at UW-Madison. Professor Golden's presentation was full of examples of academic and research programs as well as community partnerships funded by the program. Moving forward, the next 5 years will see the continuation of those programs that have been successful as well as funding for new initiatives. Dean Golden did, however, lament the 20% drop in the endowment's value since January, I thought, which will undoubtedly slow down some of the program's plans. For the first time, I really understood what it means for the UW School of Medicine and Public Health to be just that, an integrated school of medicine and public health. This is a radical transformation of how these two traditionally separated domains of educational and research areas, medicine versus public health, can be integrated with the goal of creating and sustaining a real change in public health outcomes, in this case for the entire state of Wisconsin. As important as individual medical care is, the public health perspective is critical to producing a new kind of clinical workforce. So that one of the things that the partnership program has worked on in its first 5 years and will continue in the next 5 is a reconfiguration of how medical students are taught in each year of their programs. Students graduating from the School of Medicine and Public Health will have a deep understanding as well as hands-on clinical experiences in the public health arena. They will understand that the treatment of individuals, important though that is part of addressing a larger continuum of public health needs and problems. The partnership program is funding that transformation, and it is also funding, as we heard, a multitude of community and academic partnerships that are working hard to improve the health of the entire state and to reduce health disparities that exist among different populations within the state, above all low-income and racial minorities. Dean Golden mentioned a cutting-edge report card of Wisconsin's health developed by Professor Emeritus Dr. David Kindig. This report is being held up nationally as a model, and Dr. Kindig and his colleagues just received a large grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to help other states replicate it. Though Wisconsin got an overall health grade of B-, its grade for reducing health disparities was a D. Prompted by questions from Regent Loftus, Dr. Kindig joined Dean Golden in explaining to us the ways in which health disparities are measured and the indicators used more broadly by the partnership program in holding itself accountable. Overall, members of both committees were extremely satisfied with the Dean's report and the due diligence of the Wisconsin Partnership Program to direct its resources, both fiscal and human, in ways that truly can make a difference over time to the health of the state, including some of its most at-risk places and populations, namely those in metropolitan Milwaukee and in rural communities in Wisconsin. After a healthy discussion, the two committees unanimously approved the new plan, which I will offer for your action as part of the consent agenda at the end of my report. We adjourned at 2:10 and then moved on into our education committee. The committee's our committee first heard from UW-La Crosse Provost Kathleen N. Spinken, who gave us a wonderful overview of La Crosse's academic programming and its strengths in both undergraduate and graduate education. We appreciate the fact that though new to her role as provost here at La Crosse, she clearly has a command and knowledge of this campus's leading-edge programming. She described some of the areas that will receive closer attention in the next year, now that the new senior leadership is in place, including a revised mission, potential reorganization of select departments and colleges, and a full-fledged strategic plan. A new academic plan will emerge as the core of that planning process, and we look forward to hearing more about it. We then really enjoyed our discussion on the Growth Agenda Action Step number 1, as mentioned by Senior Vice President Rebecca Martin in her remarks earlier. She and UW-Eau Claire Professor Scott Oates discussed the process and results leading to the fulfillment of that action step. As you will recall, the original language of the action step stated that the UW would commit to a coherent set of learning outcomes for all UW baccalaureate graduates and, quote, articulate succinctly and clearly what its baccalaureate graduates ought to know and be able to do as competent citizens in a 21st century knowledge-based, globally competitive democracy, unquote. Senior Vice President Martin was careful to emphasize that in developing a process to carry out this commitment, it was critical that the individual missions and identities of each of our institutions be respected. This process also needed to uphold the UW system's tradition of shared governance, which gives UW faculty at each UW institution authority over curricular matters, including general education and the assessment of student learning. Professor Oates described the process followed and the group of faculty and staff who came together to work on the statement we were asked to endorse. After what Professor Oates described as a restless beginning at a meeting of 60 faculty members last May, certain points of agreement emerged to guide the work. And they are, above all, there was the realization that there were already in place significant similarities in learning outcomes on UW campuses. Professor Oates described the group's deliberations on the value and purpose of shared learning goals at the system level. And in the end, he said that the greatest value was for teachers in the classroom with their students. He described powerfully his experience with first-year students, guiding them to think about the purpose and value of college and the liberating part of their liberal educations. There was broad consensus that the shared learning goals, which Senior Vice President Martin called the common of the system, were elegantly stated and had tremendous public value to all of us in our different roles and our various interactions with Wisconsin families, community members, and policymakers. We agreed that we should roll these out very publicly and display them prominently at every campus and on the system website, helping us, as Regent Spector said, better make the case for the importance of higher education to the state of Wisconsin. The committee happily endorsed the shared learning goals, and that resolution will be part of the consent agenda at the end of my report. And I want to reiterate here the committee's expression of appreciation to Professor Oates and the other UW faculty and staff who worked to move this action step forward. Truly exciting. We noted that as a system, we can all feel good about the very public commitment we are making with this action to ensure that we speak coherently and forcefully about the knowledge, skills, and habits of mind that our students need to thrive in the 21st century. The next item was UW-Milwaukee's program authorizations. There were two, the PhD in Environmental and Occupational Health and the Doctor of Nursing Practice. The PhD in Environmental and Occupational Health is a well-designed program that draws on existing campus strengths and addresses demonstrated environmental health needs, particularly in Milwaukee. It is anticipated that this program will be housed in the new School of Public Health pending legislative approval. The DNP, the Doctor of Nursing Practice, is the first of three system-wide we will be asked to approve. A year ago, the Education Committee heard a presentation on the need for the DNP programs throughout the state and the country, and a need driven mostly by changing practice requirements and marketplace demands. And last month, as we all know, we were able to engage in a policy discussion on professional doctorates in general. The committee was very comfortable in approving both of these programs, in particular after Regent Loftus ascertained and re-ascertained that no new GPR dollars would be required for either of these doctoral programs. And the minutes will reflect that, Regent Loftus, and we are thankful that you made sure we did that. I think we have a heightened sense of fiscal stewardship in this challenging economic climate. So finally, the committee heard the report of Senior Vice President Martin. She reviewed with us some of the key features of the UW System sabbatical program. All regents received the listing of faculty receiving sabbaticals for 2009-10 last week. Rebecca also asked us to offer feedback and revisions to these guidelines since we had not done so since December of '05. Regent Spector had the wonderful idea that we integrate the shared learning goals statement into the guidelines, and system staff will do that and bring them back to us. So we also heard an update on Project Lead the Way and on next steps in the development of a set of principles for professional doctorates. As some of you know, Project Lead the Way is a nonprofit organization focused on preparing the future technical and engineering workforce in America. The program works with middle and high schools to develop and offer challenging curricula in pre-engineering. The Wisconsin program is receiving generous support from the Kern Family Foundation based in Waukesha to help schools develop these curricula. The UW system has been working with DPI to ensure that Project Lead the Way courses will be accepted as science equivalent courses necessary for freshman admission at UW institutions. This is a great program for building a foundation of STEM learning, beginning with students in middle school. Rebecca is working with the provost to draft principles for offering of the professional doctorates at UW systems, and these will be presented to the board in February. If approved, they could be used by faculty and academic leaders in the comprehensive institutions to inform the development of program proposals for our consideration. And finally, Senior Vice President Martin did share with us some of the ways in which the academic affairs arena is attending to budget situations and planning. Regent Bradley, President. In addition to the minutes from the October 2nd, 2008 meeting, the Education Committee unanimously approved the following resolutions, which I now present as the consent agenda for your action. Resolution 11A, approving the 2009-2014 5-year plan of the Wisconsin Partnership Program. Resolution 11B, endorsing the UW System's shared learning goals for baccalaureate students in fulfillment of the growth agenda for Wisconsin Action Step Number 1. Resolution 11C, Paren 1, authorizing implementation of the PhD in Environmental and Occupational Health at UWM. Resolution 11C, Paren 2, authorizing implementation of the Doctor of Nursing Practice at UWM. Resolution 11E, Paren 2, authorizing the BS in Materials Science at UW-Eau Claire. Resolution 11E, Paren 3, authorizing the Bachelor of Science Education at UW-Stout. Resolution 11E, Paren 4, authorizing the Bachelor of Science Technology Education at UW-Stout. Resolution 11E, Paren 5, authorizing the BS in Geoscience at UW-Stevens Point. And Resolution 11E, Paren 6, delegating to the Dean of the College of Natural Resources at UW-Stevens Point the authority to establish a lumber grading training program.
Is there a second to the motion? Any discussion? Any desire to remove any of those items from the consent agenda? Okay. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
And we adjourned at 4:32, and that concludes my report. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Regent Davis. And now I call upon Regent Brent Smith to present the report of the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee.
Thank you. Thank you, President Bradley. We started out our committee with the discussion of the state fiscal update and the university's response to it. And since President Riley, I think, went over that pretty much this morning, I won't repeat that. I'm sure there'll be more opportunities to discuss that within the context of the pay plan. We also then went on for the approval of the pay plan, and we're going to wait for that until the end of this report. We had several items regarding audits come up. There was a follow-up on the occupational health and safety training audit. Sherry Ackley, who's the director of the UW System Office of Safety and Loss Prevention discussed a progress report on implementing the recommendations of an early review. The report essentially presents a framework for UW System efforts to strengthen and coordinate activities related to occupational health and safety training. We were assured that for each recommendation there's either been something done or there's a plan in the works to address the recommendation. We asked for another follow-up on this item in the next 9 to 12 months. We had a follow-up on the cost of textbooks, a subject which we're constantly reminded of in the news. Julie Gordon presented a follow-up on this, looking at the cost of textbooks. The presentation highlighted actions taken by UW System institutions to control the cost of textbooks for students, including text rental programs, early adoption programs, and alternatives to traditional textbooks. I think it was the in summary, we thought there had been progress made in the last couple of years with regard to textbook costs, but that there was still a ways to go, and we wanted to continue to monitor this going forward. Director Gordon also presented a status report on the major activities of the Office of Operations Review and Audit. The updated included information on 6 current projects and information on current LAB projects affecting UW System. These included the annual financial report audit that will be getting presented to us in February, the annual compliance audit of federal grants and expenditures, and a statewide analysis of the state's accountability, consolidation, and efficiency initiative. Julie Gordon also provided a brief update on the mental health audit, which we discussed at some length a couple months ago, and we will get a fuller report on that at our February meeting. Brief discussion on trust funds. We had 3 minor changes to the investment policy statement were discussed. 2 of the changes slightly alter the acceptable ranges for the asset allocation to global tactical assets and to private equity, with no change to the target allocation of 25% and 10% respectively. The 3rd change was made to reflect the board's early decision to no longer require subscription to a proxy service, but rather to require a proxy review. All other aspects of our investment policy statement, including the current spending plan, were reaffirmed. The committee approved Resolution 12D, which will be included in the consent agenda. We had some committee business as well, the review of source of funds by UW System institution. Assistant Vice President for Budget and Planning Paulson presented a tutorial on each of the major exhibits of the UW System Annual Budget Red Book. He outlined the wealth of financial information available to the board and provided each committee member with a CD containing all of the information for fiscal year 2008-2009, and actually I think it went back further than that. We were concerned that when Regent Felbo got a hold of that he wouldn't make any other activities for the rest of the evening, because he'd run back to his hotel room and get that CD on that financial information. He has assured us that he was going to wait before he reviewed that, but he looks for it. And we also wanted to make sure that you each could also get a CD. That just wasn't to the Finance Committee. You all can get a CD with that information. Vice President Durkin on gift report. She indicated the total gift, grant, and contract awards for the period ending September 30th, 2008 were up $92.5 million from the prior year. We asked to hear from UW-Madison, Dean of the Graduate School, at our future meeting, more on grant and contract awards. We finally approved, under committee business, a UW-Madison contract with Collegiate Licensing Company that I think was in your materials. We heard from the representatives from UW-Madison on this 8-year agreement for the provision of trademark licensing services. The committee approved that contract. Vice President Durkin updated the committee on the IRS College and University Compliance Project, the Big Ten Business Officers meeting, which was held in Chicago in November, and the UW System recently filed mandatory reports. The Business Finance and Audit Committee unanimously approved the following resolutions, which I now present as a consent agenda. We'll come back to the unclassified pay plan. On behalf of the Business Finance and Audit Committee, I now move the adoption of Resolution 12D, which is the affirmation of UW System investment policy, and Resolution 12E3, the approval of the UW-Madison contract with Collegiate Licensing Company.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Is there a request to remove either item from the consent agenda? Regent Smith, I just asked you, you mentioned that there's no change in the spending policy from our trust funds.
Correct.
And that that spending policy was reduced sometime in the last year or two. What is the rate of spending that we have now?
4, I thought it was 4, yeah.
4%. Regent Pruitt?
Just a question,
Sure.
Regent Smith. I read with interest this update on the progress on textbook cost control.
Yes.
And it looked to me like there was some significant progress. UW-Marshfield, I think, and UW-Sheboygan are piloting textbook rental programs, which I think are terrific. But beyond that, it seemed to me, and I'm interested in what the committee thought, progress is a little hard to detect beyond that. And I guess my question is, what do you think? I mean, we have families here struggling more than ever before. $800–900 a semester textbook costs. What else can this board do to sort of convey a priority, a sense of urgency about this issue, beyond the good work I know the committee has already done in terms of monitoring? But did you discuss it all in committee, or do you have any thoughts about what else we can do to convey how important we think this issue is?
When we did, it was an involved discussion. It was not just the report, and then this Regent Burmaster and Regent Felbo also expressed, I think, exactly what you are talking about in the times we live in, and looking at that cost, which some of us talked about who have children in the university system, that especially the higher one compared to the 4-year, compared to the university like Madison, compared to one of the rental programs. And I think what we thought had worked, some of the ideas, the early adoption, the key was to get it identified early on, I think, is that if professors and our people within our system can identify those textbooks early on, that is going to lead, has been probably the #1 thing that has lowered some of the textbook costs. We keep coming back to the rental programs, and you can see the disparity between the two. And there are obviously barriers to doing that at some campuses, but you can obviously see that difference. But I don't know where we go from here, Chuck, on that, because we've made some progress, but it has been slow. But it has been, certainly the committee had a number of questions, not only for Julie, but for others who were there, as to where we go from here. But it is, when you add that on to tuition and other things, it is a tremendous area of concern. And I'd ask, I know Regent Felbo and Regent Burmaster were, anything they wanted to add to that.
I think you expressed the frustration that we felt as well. We talked a little about what we could do to involve faculty in this understanding of how some students won't even take a certain course because they know of the expense of the textbooks. So we were kind of at a loss, to tell you the truth, of where we really would go. But how could we get faculty to really not see it as an affront to rigor or academic freedom, but as really them being involved in the solution of how we can make sure it isn't a barrier for our students.
Regent Bartel?
Well, I wasn't at the meeting, but I did read the report that was provided, and I was also very concerned that there doesn't seem to be any significant progress, at least any major progress around the system. And I'm trying to figure out, as I listen to the discussion and read this, what we can do. Right. Is it the faculty? I'd like to hear from a chancellor. What is it that we can do to emphasize the importance of this analysis that we're making and the initiative that we're trying to promote here, which is to have more than 7 4-year campuses and 2 2-year colleges operate a rental program. I mean, these are books. I mean, can't we do something to make these materials affordable to our kids? Why is this so difficult? I just don't understand it. Is there a chancellor who wants to address this? Carlos?
The early adoption is obviously a low-cost way to improve the situation. For the larger campuses, the issue of rental programs, as far as it's been described to me, is limited by scalability. At the larger campuses, it's more difficult to engage in a campus rental program. And the third point is that the faculty, particularly the research campuses, knowledge is changing dramatically. They want the flexibility to change the materials as the knowledge base changes, and that also, and clearly the issue of their freedom to select the textbooks that they use is important as well. So I think it's a more complex issue. We have worked with the Student Association to get early adoption programs moved forward, and that has helped to some extent. But until we can come up with a business model that will support a scale out to the larger campuses of a rental program, and I don't think we're there yet, it's going to be very difficult to see a dramatic decline in the cost of textbooks. And the publishers are part of this. I think you cannot simply look at the campuses without looking at the publishing industry, which is about as monopolistic as and if you're in the library business, you know what I'm talking about. There are a few publishers that control this trade. They are encouraging new mediums of expression. They're bundling the textbooks in more and more expensive products. They want to turn these products over on an annual basis. With that sort of market, it's very difficult for us to have a significant impact. But we share your frustration. I hear it from students all the time. The cost of the textbooks are just getting prohibitive. Other chancellors want to... Senator Gallagher.
I'm glad that Carlos mentioned the publishers, because we do need to keep in mind we're a nonprofit entity. They are for-profit and are pretty good at what they do. Our actually textbook rental at UW-La Crosse is quite popular, but it is something that actually we're pretty much, I'm looking over at our CFO, subsidizing aspects of that. It is something that students like, but it's very hard for us to do. So I don't know that there's a easy answer to this when you have a handful of companies that are very aggressive and keep changing editions of books because they want to sell more books. Having said that, what is interesting about this particular situation is the faculty are gatekeepers, and if they do have some decision-making power over what books students will be required to buy, there is interest. I mean, if you ask a faculty member, I think everyone would agree, are you looking at this as something to add cost to the students? They'd say absolutely not. They'd like it to be free. I mean, so they don't have any pecuniary motive in the process. And actually, as the online resources are more fully developed, there are a lot of faculty who are trying to put the materials out there just for everybody to use in a very pure sense. So I'm not really giving you an answer to your question other to say that we understand the importance of it and are doing all we can to make the situation as best as it can be for our students. But really, I think the publishers are the people who are driving this, and again, they'd say, well, we're corporations and we got to maximize shareholder value in return for our investors. So that there's two different motives here.
I understand that it's complicated, and I understand that you're dealing with publishers who have different motivations. But isn't there something that can be done with faculty, some motivation that can be done with faculty that would reward those members of the faculty who take positive steps to reduce the cost of their materials to students? I mean, I'm sure that there are those who do it with no reward expected, but maybe there's some way that faculty could be rewarded.
This is something that we talk to faculty regularly about, but certainly we'll bring it up at the next faculty meeting that I have with the representatives of the faculty senates from across the system in terms of looking at the early adoption program, seeing if there are ways that we could make more faculty aware of the issues and move this higher up on the agenda.
One thing I wanted to point out, Regent Bartel, is that faculty at various universities have tried really hard over time to reduce the costs by providing students reading packets, for example, excerpts from books, and the publishers have gone after the faculty and universities on the basis of copyright law. And so, in a sense, what faculty have tried to do on their own has turned out to be what could be considered a legal problem, and certainly a problem from the point of view of publishers. So where faculty have the motivation, there are real obstacles to what they've been able to do. I also want to reiterate what Carlos Santiago said and say that at research universities, it is the case that the faculty are constantly changing the materials and also are writing the textbooks themselves, and that introduces a whole other level of complexity that we don't need to go into now. But in any case, I think certainly we as chancellors can put a greater emphasis on this. In the end, I think providing financial aid that covers the cost of books is probably a more expedient way to go in the long term than fighting the publishing industry. But that's my view. That requires that we really put even more emphasis on need-based financial aid and see what we can do to include the cost of textbooks in financial aid packages.
Regent Falbo?
I think it's obviously important enough that we need to continue to try and do something. I don't think we should stop it here, and I know there's a lot of good work being done. There's a couple of issues that concern me when we were talking, and that is not all materials are changing that quickly. Certainly in the research area they are, but there's a vast buying power within our system that I don't know that we're taking advantage of. And it's not a matter of taking away anybody's freedom. It's just a matter of asking to know earlier. That doesn't seem insurmountable to me. And then to utilize system-wide buying power, and I don't know if that'll do anything with the publishers or not, but I'd sure like to give it a go. The rental program, if a book doesn't last long enough, somebody's going to pay for it anyway. And so we're going to bear the cost that we're not now bearing and can't afford either. So the rental program is a good program if a book lasts long enough. If it doesn't, there's costs involved. I have no idea what those are, but they're probably significant over time. So I think it's something that I would suggest we do not let go by the wayside, that we do figure out some way to pursue this further, to pursue our tremendous buying power in a way that we can maximize the cost of, or minimize the cost of books, and to, you know, I don't think it's enough to suggest early adoption. I think it has to be more than just a suggestion.
Okay. Procedurally, where we are is we're waiting to vote on consent resolution, but it's okay. Did you want to make another comment?
I might urge that the adoption of those, but no. One of the things what was part of the executive summary of the follow-up on the textbooks, which I think is important here, is action that Congress took, and that I think you're seeing efforts in the state legislatures across the country too on this issue. Wisconsin, as indicated in this report, had some legislation that would have been aimed at, to a degree, at the textbook publishers that failed last time, and I suspect might come back up again. As part of the College Opportunity Affordability Act, part of that was aimed at publishers disclosing, in higher ed, disclosing course schedules, disclosing things within, with regard to textbooks. So I think ultimately, for better or for worse, you may land up in the legislative arena as opposed to, or in addition to this arena.
Colleen.
These are obviously, very concerning issues to students, and I'm thankful for all the attention that we're spending on this, because oftentimes the cost of textbooks is an additional cost that's not necessarily factored into financial aid considerations. Even if the package is supposed to account for it, students and their families don't always budget that way. And you end up with the students who are having to work, along a full-time job, also needing to utilize library resources and the reserve stacks, but then the libraries are open shorter hours, and it's sort of a snowball effect for those students. I wanted to bring up two ideas. One is that I've had some very attentive professors list multiple page numbers for different versions of a textbook, or offer some online reserves or something, so that students who have purchased an older version of the textbook are able to still access that new information. And oftentimes, the page numbers are about the only thing you can notice that's changed from one version to the next. And the other thing I would just throw out there to all our campuses is to think about helping students do book swaps. I know ASM at Madison has just piloted a book swap, and it's really an excellent way for us to work on this in the short term because it allows students to sell their books at a higher profit than they would to the bookstores and to buy them at a lower cost. So to the extent that we can help our student governments maybe pilot those programs, that would be great.
Well, for those people who don't usually observe our meetings, if you think that was a lot of discussion on a resolution that doesn't get discussed, you should see what we do on a resolution where there is discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The consent motion carries.
Then we'll move next to the approval of the pay plan, and for that I'll turn it over to Tom Andrews and President Riley.
You have in your packet a handout that will follow the PowerPoint. I will briefly review the key issues from the November meeting, and then President Riley will discuss the issues as they currently exist and are connected to the recommended pay plan. You can see the major issues here: the state economic conditions, implications of an aging workforce, salary comparison. The reality check relates to the fact that in November we were talking about a $3.1 billion shortfall in revenues relative to the 2009-11 biennium. That number has now grown to $5.4 billion. In terms of implications of an aging workforce, the movement of faculty and staff toward retirement in increasing numbers along with growing competition to replace them is going to be an additional planning and resource challenge. The third issue, Wisconsin universities are below the median of peer salaries. I mean, that's been a continuing issue for a number of years. Maintaining a position of being below average suggests increasing difficulty in attracting and retaining faculty and staff. One note here, when we talk about the median of peer salaries, we are required through a specific methodology for every biennial pay plan to come forward and present exactly whatever that formula produces. And that's irregardless of economic conditions, good times, bad times. So the numbers we bring forward comes out of an advisory group, the compensation committee, that makes a recommendation to President Riley. Some of the steps from again, that were discussed from the November board discussion began with, obviously, the board discussion on a number of the issues that we just mentioned. State revenue projections that came out on November 20th, which changed those that were discussed on November 6th. The board action for approval will be today. Then there's a number of phases that as the President reviews and forwards the pay plan to the Office of State Employment Relations, OSER, that OSER then passes it along to the Joint Committee on Employment Relations for their approval. And then there's the passage of the executive budget and approval by the Joint Committee again. Again, we don't know what those dates are. The assumption is that when we look at the probability, it'll be somewhere in July, perhaps, that we can be looking at having a fairly clear knowledge of what's going to be happening with pay plans. We may know much before that, too. So, key issues, $3.1 billion shortfall. That was 2009-11 as of November 6th. It is now $5.4 billion. Competitive salary is a primary factor in the recruitment and retention of faculty and staff. Obviously, when we look at 2007-8, the last year that we have an actual number, we are 9.8% below the peer median. To address that, 7.78% is required annually for the next 2 years, looking into the next biennium, to reach the peer median. Now, these estimates were made prior to any of the economic issues we're dealing with right now. I think they came out in June or July. The estimate includes an increase in peer adjustments of 3.1% annually. The estimates, we think, can be reconsidered. President Riley has reconsidered, in effect, that into the pay plan and his recommendations. What I'd like to do now is pass it along to President Riley.
Thanks, Tom, and let me start with apologies to the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee members and others who were at their meeting yesterday afternoon, because we're really going to say pretty much, Tom and I, what we said there, but we thought it was important for the whole board to have the opportunity to hear the presentation that led to Brent and the other members of the committee recommending to the full board this pay plan. So bear with us for those of you who heard it yesterday. Again, I just wanted to emphasize the huge change in the landscape since this board last met and discussed this issue in the projected deficit. We went from a projected deficit of $3.1 billion in the state budget for 09-11 projected to $5.4 billion in 09-11. Very, very big jump as the revenue streams that the state depends on were analyzed, and we discovered indeed that they were all tanking in effect, and that gap, that deficit gap getting wider. We felt that considering all of that, and that change in particular, the national, international economic environment, that a 7.78% annual increase in each year of the 09-11 biennium just wasn't realistic. We are obligated, as Tom said, by statute to let the state know that is the gap, and based on the formula we have and the agreed peer universities we use in that formula, we will do that, but we're going to come up with a different pay plan recommendation than that 7.78% gap would drive you to, if the board agrees with what I will present to you. And with that in mind, I'll remind people that President Lincoln's first Commerce Secretary was a fellow by the name of Salmon Chase, who was an Ohio politician, very prominent. He, matter of fact, was a rival to Lincoln for the Republican nomination when Lincoln won it, and went on to win the presidency. And he became Lincoln's Secretary of Commerce, and he was a very difficult, high-maintenance Secretary of Commerce. He was constantly threatening to resign and throwing hissy fits, and Lincoln having to write him letters apologizing for whatever offense he had taken, some kind of behavior. He finally did resign, and at that point Lincoln nominated him for the Supreme Court. And he said to a friend, Lincoln did, "I'd rather swallow a chair than nominate Salmon Chase to the Supreme Court," because he had been so difficult, but Lincoln believed he would be a very good Supreme Court justice, and he was an ardent abolitionist, and Lincoln wanted somebody of his intellectual strength and fervor for abolition on the Supreme Court. So I want to say here, even though I'd rather swallow a chair, I am going to greatly reduce that recommendation for pay plan, and it's not what I'd hoped to come forward with. It's not what our faculty and staff deserve, but I think it's what we need to do. Given the incredible fiscal credit market downturn that we're facing, I think we all recognize this is the biggest economic crisis the world has faced since the Great Depression in the 1930s. We all want the public in Wisconsin and their elected officials to know that we understand the depth of the crisis, at least so far. Let's hope it doesn't get any deeper, and the anguish that is causing for families all across the state. And with the numbers both in the state and across the nation on the current level of job losses, the projected increasing level of job losses, we will have many of our fellow citizens in the state of Wisconsin riding through this holiday season being very anxious about whether they'll have any job coming out the other end of it, and we need to recognize that. Some have said to me, well, why would you even recommend any pay plan increase in that kind of environment? Well, again, I think we need to be mindful of the talent auction context that we work in trying to attract and retain faculty and staff. We talked a lot about this at the November board meeting. This is a competition for talent that will continue through the recession we're in and will only accelerate when we get out on the other side of this, and we can't afford to continue to lose ground. We back in this board in 07-09 projected, as that first bullet says on this slide, that we would want to need 5.23% salary adjustments per year for the 4 years ahead in 07-09 and then 09-11. We adopted, under President Bradley's leadership, that as a goal back then. We think now that it's reasonable to assume that our peers would average something like a 2% salary adjustment annually. Again, we had been projecting that they would go up by about 3.1. Obviously, with the continuing downturn in the economy, they're not going to go that high. One of our problems here is that we're one of the very first public university systems to have to come out of the box to suggest what our pay plan ought to be. Almost nobody else is out there already talking about this, and a lot of them really haven't made decisions, I think, about what they will do. But as we've had informal conversations with colleagues at the peer institutions around the country, we think assuming something like 2% is probably reasonable in what others will do with their pay plan packages as they come forward. So this 2.5% adjustment per year, which is the number that I am recommending to you for each year in the 09-11 biennium, would scale back our goal that we had set. It's still our goal, but it would scale that back by half, in effect, while we would hope maybe still providing a little progress in closing the gap. That is, we're about 10% behind. If others move up only around 2% in our peer group and we were able to move up 2.5, we'd have a little bit of a gap closing effect. And I think it's important for this board to send a signal to our faculty and staff now that that goal is still very much our goal. We recognize it, and we do want to get back to it when we can, but we can't make much progress given the economic conditions right now. So in conclusion, and we'll go to the next slide, Tom, if you would, I've really got 3 recommendations for you, and I'll come back and talk a little more about each of them. The first is the 2.5% salary adjustment in each year of fiscal year 2010 and 2011. That is the 09-11 biennium. I'm recommending that pay go up on average by 2.5% in each year in that coming biennium. Secondly, I'm recommending that this board again endorse state group health insurance benefits for domestic partners, and I will come back to that. And the third recommendation is that you endorse the pay plan distribution guidelines, which are in your packets, and I'll come back and comment on those as well, point them out to you in the materials and comment on them. On the first recommendation, I think at this point that a 2.5% salary adjustment is a reasonable, credible figure to go with under the circumstances. I hope it will allow us to maintain the public support for the university in a very tough environment, support we'll need for more competitive salary enhancements and the growth agenda when we come out of this recession. It also, obviously, at that lower level, will help hold down tuition at a time when many of our students will be scrambling hard to find tuition dollars. On the second recommendation, domestic partner benefits, I think we need to press hard on this issue. Once again, this board has been strong on this issue. You know the arguments, they're compelling arguments. I think in all of our judgments, it's a matter of basic human fairness. It's a matter of correcting a significant disadvantage we have in recruitment and retention of high-quality faculty and staff, and it's a matter of catching up in the competition with so many of our peer institutions that offer these benefits, as do so many of our Wisconsin corporations. Some of you who've been on the board for a while will remember a session a couple years ago where we brought in some corporate executives by phone who talked about their benefits plans and how they do provide these benefits for domestic partners because they think it's the right thing to do, and they know as corporations they've got to compete with other corporations for talent, and this is one of the ways they do it. So we need our elected representatives to move on this. We need them to move on this now, and I think we have some hope that they may be ready to do that. So we want to send a signal about how important this remains to us. On the distribution guidelines, let me suggest we look for a minute at the language in the packets. If you go to your Regent materials, it's the first item under the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee agenda, and turn to the pinkish pages that are the executive summary on the unclassified pay plan, and go to the last paragraph in that set of materials, which is headed Distribution Guidelines. You'll see at the end of that paragraph it says this about those guidelines. The guidelines provide that not less than 1/3 of the total compensation plan shall be distributed on the basis of merit market. Not less than 1/3 of the total compensation plan shall be distributed on the basis of solid performance. Those guidelines should apply to any pay plan greater than 2%, but pay plans of 2% or less may be distributed across the board to satisfactory performers. And let me make a few comments about that language. Not less than 1/3 of the total for merit market, not less than 1/3 for solid performance, and the third of that can be made up in a combination of merit market, solid performance, or all one or all the other, depending on what the supervisor would deem as appropriate. So there's some flexibility there at the campus and unit level. The guidelines should apply to any pay plan greater than 2%. The notion here is that once you get down to 2% and below, you're talking about very few dollars and making tough, discriminating choices on the basis of a very few dollars to give away probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Not a good use of everybody's time and energy, but if it's above 2%, it does make sense to do that. What we're saying there is pay plans of 2% or less may be distributed across the board. Language there is still permissive. I think most of our campuses would choose to do it that way if the pay plan were 2% or less. There may be some campuses that would still want to not do it across the board, and this would allow those campuses that wanted to do it that way to do it that way nonetheless. And it talks about distribution to satisfactory performers or solid performers, same meaning. I want to make the point here that all of this is premised on annual performance evaluation of all our faculty and staff, and in that evaluation, if you don't get a solid or satisfactory performance rating, you're not eligible for any portion of the pay plan. So the distribution, however it's done, is distribution to those who are judged to be solid performers and above. These are the same guidelines that this board has used over the last number of biennia. There's nothing new here, but I know that some of you are more familiar with them than others, so I wanted to take the time to go over them the way I just did. So with that, Mr. President, I'll entertain questions or comments or reactions, and Regent Smith.
Thank you, President Ryan. And I have a few questions, but I first want to say I support your recommendations. There are some tough choices, but I think you've made the right choices. A couple numbers that we went over in finance which might be helpful. The difference between a 2.5 in terms of dollars and a 5.2. I think we had that number yesterday. It might be helpful.
I actually have it here. A 2.5 pay plan cost is almost $24 million, $23.9 million. So if double that would be around 50.
Okay.
50 million.
And then I think Al gave us a number which I think might be helpful on the cost of if we implemented the domestic partnership benefit.
The information that we have based upon the experience of other Big Ten institutions is that the participation rate for individuals in this benefit is about 1% of their population, and at 1% would be a cost of about $1.3 million, which is 0.39% of the total that we spend on health benefits.
Thank you.
Regent Bartel.
Well, I'm not going to swallow a chair, but I will support the recommendation. I have a question about methodology, Kevin. When we say that reported peer salary data for 2007-9 indicated faculty will enter the 2009-11 biennium nearly 10% below peer group medians, what are the peer group medians that we're talking about? Is that system-wide? Is it comprehensives versus colleges? Is it faculty versus staff? I mean, how are those peer groups selected, and are we aggregating them? How does that work?
Good question. Al?
The peer groups were established by a commission, a governor's commission in 1984, and there's a separate peer group for each of the, Madison has its own peer group, Milwaukee has a peer group, the comprehensive institutions have a peer group, and we include the colleges and extension within that. So these are peers that have been selected.
The colleges are included with the comprehensive?
With the comprehensive, well, because we don't have peers nationally that we can line up. We typically include the faculty salaries at the colleges with the comprehensive institutions for these purposes.
Regent Loftus, I think, was a member of the commission that set this up, so maybe he can give us a little history.
Probably was the chair. I can't even remember. I know I was the chair of Joker for 8 years, and I can't remember anything about that.
Certainly reassuring.
Well, in the recession of the early '80s, which it looks like this one will go beyond that one, we enacted a temporary income tax surcharge, a permanent sales tax increase, took 30,000 students out of the system. However, that did set the stage for faculty catch-up pay, although the Regents and the university came to the legislature much like the heads of the 3 auto companies came to Congress a couple of weeks ago, wanting faculty catch-up pay, but no plan. So that's how the peer system came about, that they wanted faculty catch-up in between the campuses. So the peer group was their peers, and they didn't have to be in the state. So that's still the same system. My only other comment, think of what this budget is going to be like when obviously an income tax increase and a sales tax increase are probably off the table.
The 10% that we're talking about is an aggregate of all of the peer groups? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an aggregate.
So some are more, some are less?
Correct.
Correct.
Any other questions of Kevin? Regent Smith, would you make a motion?
On behalf of Business, Finance, and Audit, we would move Resolution 12B, approval of the 2009-11 unclassified pay plan recommendations.
Is there a second? I was going to say fails for lack of a second. Okay, move to second. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
That concludes my report.
Okay. Thank you, Regent Smith. And now I'd like, and also thank you, Kevin and Tom.
Thank all of you.
Appreciate the explanation to the full board. I think that was a good thing to do, and appreciate it. I call upon Regent Bartel to present the report of the Capital Budget Committee.
Thank you, President Bradley. The Capital Planning and Budget Committee met yesterday, and after the minutes were approved of our October meeting, we heard a very interesting report from UW-L on its master plan. I want to credit Bob Hetzel and Matt Lewis, who made an excellent presentation. Gave the committee a brief look at the progress that UW-La Crosse is making on its master plan, including recent capital projects such as we got a time-lapse view of the construction of the Stadium and Fields project, which was very interesting. Plan for the new academic building and a proposed new residence hall. They're making good progress here. We have a number of resolutions to present. The committee wants to do its patriotic best in participating in the stimulus plan. And we analyzed and voted on a total of $333 million worth of capital projects, which I'm now going to present as consent agenda items. Resolution 1.3.c, and you have these in your materials, requests authority to construct the tomotherapy addition project for the School of Veterinary Medicine at UW-Madison. This project of about $2.5 million is 100% gift funded, including contributions of equipment from tomotherapy. And it will also provide space for innovative and unique treatment of animals in their veterinary oncology program. We like those 100% gift-funded programs. Resolution 1.3.d seeks authority to demolish Union South Building. Yay! UW-Madison. And the High Ray Hall, which is nearby on the Madison campus. It's the first step in the new Union South construction project, which you may recall was the subject of a segregated fee referendum several years ago, and will proceed. This is just the first step, the demolition. It will save some time in getting started. Resolution 1.3.e requests authority to slightly increase the project budget and construct the new academic building at UW-Oshkosh. The design of this new building is heavily influenced by sustainability principles. The building and systems will be designed to be about 50% more energy efficient than the current state of Wisconsin building code requires, with a minimum goal of including 10% renewable energy. The building is also expected to obtain a LEED Gold rating. This is very important to the campus and to the students. The campus also plans to use the renewable energy sources as an educational tool. Resolution 1.3.f relates to UW-Platteville's request for authority to increase the project budget to $5.3 million and construct Phase 1 of the Williams Fieldhouse Addition project. This phase will construct new space to provide students wellness, recreation, and general education needs. It will be funded with program revenue-supported borrowing, and that is supported by an increase of segregated fees of $44 per year, which the SUFAC on the campus at Platteville approved. Resolution 1.3.g authorizes UW-Stevens Point to accept a gift of 21 acres of land from the UW-Stevens Point Foundation, valued at $31,000. This is a gift that will expand the university's owned acreage to approximately 40 acres at the Tree Haven National Resource and Education Center, which is up near Tomahawk, Wisconsin. Resolution 1.3.h seeks approval to increase the project budget to $1.3 million and construct the Drumlin Hall Dining Hall renovation project at UW-Whitewater. This project will build a small addition and new entry with staircase, an elevator, and a gathering space on the south side of Drumlin Hall, and remodel both the first and second floors. Debt service for this project will be paid from program operations. Resolution 1.3.i requests authority to modify the enumeration of 3 projects that are already in the 2009-2011 capital budget. First, and this is a very interesting one, and you pay attention to this, is the UW-Milwaukee Master Plan Initiative. This item modifies the UW system 6-year plan and the 2009-2011 capital budget by requesting a multi-biennium or biennia fund for the development of projects at UW-Milwaukee. The total amount, which is $123.4 million in state funding for this master plan initiative, is approximately the same amount as was previously proposed in the 6-year plan for UWM, and which we took up a few months ago. However, this initiative provides greater flexibility in determining the specific projects to be funded, the mix of fund sources, and the timing that is used to proceed with the projects as to when they will be begun and constructed. The projects identified by UWM as part of this request are the following. First of all, the acquisition and renovation of Columbia St. Mary's Hospital that adjoins the campus, and those of us who have been to the campus and seen the hospital know where that is and know that it's it would seem to be an important possible acquisition. Secondly, the Freshwater Science Great Lakes Research Facility renovation and addition. Third, a new integrated research building. And fourth, the acquisition and development of land that is not contiguous to campus, to the present campus, but would be the site of some departments and other initiatives. The procedure that we're talking about here is modeled after what we have sometimes referred to as the BioStar, UW-Madison BioStar process, that enumerated state funds with matching gift funds over multiple biennia for the development of specific academic and research facilities. And what this does is provide flexibility to the campus to align its capital planning and budgeting with its fundraising success, with political realities and the availability of real estate. And all of that has to come together in order to make an efficient process. So this is a relatively new approach. We think that it makes sense. We're going to see how this works for UW-Milwaukee. We've worked very closely with the Chancellor and his staff in identifying the projects and the process, and we'll hope that it is successful. Another of the projects that is included in this resolution is the UW River Falls Hagestead Hall renovation. This is a project that remodels the former student union. You recall that when we were at River Falls, we met in a brand new and beautiful student union. This is the old one. It's now called Hagestead Hall, and it is intended by this project to create a one-stop enrollment services center for students. Now, this is also interesting because it includes a waiver of our policy, the Regent policy 19-8, to allow the use of student-approved segregated fees to fund this $4 million remodeling project. Our Regent policy specifies that administrative facilities should be funded with state general funds, and I think it's a good policy. These administrative facilities should not be funded with segregated fees. And as a rule, I think that we should follow that policy. However, the campus proposes, and our committee approved this proposal, due to funding constraints and higher priorities at UW River Falls and throughout the UW system. Because of that and because of the significant need at River Falls, it would be years before state funding would be available for the renovation, and if it isn't done this way, it won't be done. The building will sit either unused or underutilized for many years. So, for new space for student administrative services, the campus is requesting the use of segregated fees to support the project. The $43 per year fee increase has been approved by the Student Facilities and Fees Board, and we've looked into that. Kevin is very concerned about making sure that the students really do understand the issues and are given a full opportunity to have a say in these kinds of decisions. And I think we are satisfied that this is an appropriate time to waive the Regent policy in this instance. The third project that is in this item will extensively remodel the existing Memorial Student Center at UW-Stout. A pre-design process in which the students participated to inform the design process has been completed. The remodeling will include food service venues, student organizations, student newspapers, student government spaces, bookstore, service center, meeting rooms, and so forth. The work will include window replacements, renovating, plumbing, mechanical, a lot of infrastructure. The University Student Senate approved support of the $18 million renovation project with segregated fee increase of $171.88 per year, which will be phased in over 3 years. The segregated fee increase is based on anticipated enrollment projections, and they're expecting to use 20-year bonds to fund the project. Again, we inquired about the students' participation, and I think we're satisfied that the students did indeed want this project funded with seg fees. Finally, Resolution 1.3.J requests approval to construct 14 minor projects on 7 campuses under the All-Agency Maintenance Fund program. One of the notable projects is the UW-Eau Claire Phillips Hall Material Science Center Laboratory Remodeling Project, which will provide laboratory space for the NanoSTEM program, which we've heard about recently. And it's an initiative involving UW-Eau Claire, Stout, and the Chippewa Valley Technical Colleges. These 8 resolutions were passed unanimously by the committee, and I now move adoption of all of these resolutions, 1.3.C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and J.
Is there a second to the motion? Moved and seconded. Is there a request to remove any item from the consent agenda? Regent Loftus?
I'd like to remove I3I. Is that 1-3I or I3I, whatever it is?
No, I3I. Okay, with that item, is there a request to remove any other item? Regent Loftus?
I don't have a request to move any items, just a discussion on the student fees. I'd like a quick overview of the student fees that we're approving in these, and Jeff did a wonderful job of explaining the two, and just so we're not surprised the next time we see the fee schedule come along. If we could have a rundown of what we're approving here on segregated fees that are student fees.
Okay. Well, there are several projects that are being funded by an increase in segregated fees. Let me make sure that I have the ones that I have all the ones that we're talking about. I think it was the last two. The one is
Regent Bartel, we can have David help you with this if you'd like.
On page 3 of the resolution that we're discussing, 1.3I, at the bottom of page 3, there's a summary of the fee impact of the UW River Falls project. The $4 million remodeling project is in part bonded and would be a $43 per year per student segregated fee increase, and that has been approved by the Student Senate and the SUFAC. And then on UW-Stout, as Regent Bartel stated on page 4, there's an explanation of the fee impact of $171.88 spread over 3 years. Those are the only 2 segregated fee projects in today's materials.
But Union South is already...
Union South is an enumerated project already voted on by the board, and all this project does is pull forward the demolition part of that enumerated project. And then probably in February, we'll be back with the design report for the entire project.
Regent Davis, with that explanation, do you still want to remove I3I from the consent agenda?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so with that item removed, all in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. And now is there a motion for I3I? Regent Davis?
I had a question, so I
move I3I.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion on I3I? Regent Davis.
I am specifically wanting to talk about the master plan initiative at UWM. And although I am in favor of the flexibility for all the reasons that have been discussed with the committee and all. My question is, these projects are, suffice it to say, hugely important, quite complicated, quite political, et cetera, et cetera. And I just wonder what assurances do we have as a Board of Regents to make sure that we're really in the loop at, along the way, especially when I think about the potential project in engineering in Wauwatosa, the Columbia St. Mary's project. I'm just really not wanting to, I'm in favor of flexibility, but I really do think we need to make sure that we're exercising our responsibilities, and I just want to know what you think about that, David.
Thank you very much for the question. That is the benefit of this approach, is that the projects are only eligible for future funding. This sets aside funding in 3 biennia for which the institution, collaborating with the system, can come back to the Board of Regents to access that funding, and also to the State Building Commission. Both bodies would have to approve any particular use of these funds on a per-project basis. And yet it doesn't lock up specific funding for a specific project that may not actually happen, particularly at that specific amount. We've had for several biennia general fund borrowing set aside for the acquisition and build out of Columbia St. Mary's, and it's tied up and you can't use it for other priorities, and Columbia St. Mary's remains a ways off as an opportunity. And so it preserves that opportunity without tying up money that you could use for other purposes.
And another thing it does, and that the committee felt was very persuasive, is that where there are donors involved, action by the Board of Regents in the Milwaukee initiative will show a state involvement, a state commitment to the project, which helps bring in the gifts.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on that motion? Regent? I don't know, Betty, do you have your... I'm sorry, Betty?
It was actually for the UW River Falls. Should we vote on this one and then have a discussion on that one?
No, they're all in the same.
They're all on the same page. Okay, all right. My question about the UW River Falls, I was just wondering about a pattern of waiving policy 19-8, if in fact this is an event. Is this the beginning of a pattern? Is this a pattern that has continued? I just want to know about that. It just seemed to me that we're doing two things, and I want to be clear on that.
I can give you the history. The only time we're aware of that this has ever been waived was in 1999. For UW-Madison, the board waived the policy to allow segregated fees to be used for student health services that are now moving into the University Square development. That's the only time we're aware of it's been waived. So I think the minutes reflect that the same concern was expressed 10 years ago. Would this be something that happened frequently? And I think the answer is it has not happened since then. So it's been quite judicious, and it is clearly the lesser of two poor choices. One choice is to have the building remain as is with minimal occupancy and not a functional building, waiting for general fund borrowing to support it that could be years and years away, or to remodel it now with these funds that students have approved and make it a highly functional, highly desirable student use building. And I think that this board would be very diligent, and we would be very diligent about bringing these forward again and not want to see a pattern of shifting to this source.
As we look at affordability, I'm just looking at what it is that we will be doing and whether or not we're establishing patterns. I just want to keep that in mind.
I think at Regent Womack, a thing I found compelling about the request for the waiver here is that, as in the previous instance at UW-Madison, although these buildings are, in both cases, were classified as administrative buildings, they really are student services functions that are performed in the buildings. They're not a bunch of associate vice presidents sitting around in offices.
Regent Pruitt.
I just wanted to applaud the committee, particularly on the UWM master plan initiative, for the work that they did, as well as the work that Chancellor Santiago, Christy Brown, and others did in the campus level. I think this is with the concerns, the appropriate concerns that Regent Davis raised. This is a good day for given all that we heard in June about the sort of the need for flexibility and to grow the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and providing this kind of flexibility in this kind of way. I just wanted to applaud the committee and the campus for putting this plan together and helping us move forward.
And this associate vice president really did have a lot to do with that.
He did. I didn't identify him by title, however. I identified him by name.
I just wanted to make one comment about the student fees at UW River Falls. I definitely think that it's a good thing. That building needs to be renovated, and I've been contacted by several students from River Falls saying that this is something that they desire. But at the same time, I do want to just voice that it really concerns me moving forward when students are paying for these kind of things. And it hasn't happened, since 1999, but in the tough economic times that we're in, and as students' demands increase, I just don't see how we'll get away from this decision after we make the decision to either go ahead and allow them to do it or not. But I just don't know how we'll ever get away from not doing it again once we do it this time.
If I could comment, I think I would be very hesitant to bring non-student specific projects to the President and to you using this kind of funding. It's rare that you have a former student union to be repurposed. And it's rare that you have the need for intensive student services. So I don't believe that you're going to see more requests like this for other general fund purpose space.
Regent Loftus.
Well, I'm getting more agnostic about student fees, given what's going to come at us. Let's talk about this as a stimulus package, and I think Regent Bartel is right. How fast can we get this money out there? Can you give us a rundown? And is there an expedited process, not just on this, on all of the projects? How fast can this get out there?
Thank you again for the question. I've been asked that question by the state and the federal government as well, and we're putting together a package of projects that you could describe as hard hats in the field, shovels in the ground in 2009. And actually this project is one, because it's an interior remodel, can be designed, built quite quickly. It isn't a complicated design for the AE firms to pull together, and it is highly desirable project that could get actually underway fairly quickly.
How about some of the other projects? Are they?
Well, the Union South project, for example, in Madison, will definitely be bid in 2009. I wonder if Mr. Fish knows what month we might be bidding that.
Probably this spring.
This spring, $88 million bid. And we have another number of others around the state that are also coming to bid this spring. Here at La Crosse, February, $44 million academic building will be bid. And I'm always amazed at how fast from the bid date that the workers are actually on the job literally the next day, often from the time the bid is awarded, because they're ready to go. So we have a number around the state that are gearing up.
Well, we just have to think of these projects as part of the broader economic plan, and anything we can do to expedite them, we should do it.
UW Superior, we hope to bid the academic building in February as well.
Regent Falbo.
Just a point of clarification. Should we not have in this motion the waiver of the statute, as we do in 13F? Shouldn't that be included in the motion?
It could be. I think we looked at it as adopting the motion to make the recommendation for funding the project was waiving the policy.
Well, but 13F, you put it in for a different policy, but you put it in that it is a waiver.
13F?
Either take one out or put one in, whatever you prefer.
13F? No, it's a policy, Regent policy.
Oh, the statutes.
Yeah.
And
The other one doesn't say waive.
I think, as Kevin pointed out, it should be stated in there for if we're going outside of a policy, so that when we do look at these in the future, we remember.
Regent Falbo, 13F is something entirely different.
No, I know it is.
Oh, okay.
I know it is, but I'm just, if we're seeking a waiver to a policy,
we're seeking a waiver to a
Riverfall,
statute in 13F.
I just think it should be clarified in the minutes in the motion that that's what we're doing.
Well, but one is a statute and one is a policy.
And certain.
I always thought a statute was really, that's kind of like in concrete. So if you waive those, you probably don't.
Well, let me ask Regent Pruitt, as the person who made the motion, would you accept as a friendly amendment to include reference to the policy that we're waiving?
Does it have to be friendly?
That would be. I'd consider it very friendly.
Chair considers it friendly. And the person who seconded that motion, well, I think you seconded that motion, Regent Falbo.
I'm friendly.
Well, you have to be friendly to your own request. Pardon me? Oh, you did. I'm sorry. It came from over here, I remember. But so the motion any other discussion on the motion as amended? All in favor of the motion as amended, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, the mover and the seconder. Regent Bartel?
And that concluded our capital planning budget committee meeting.
Okay, thank you. The next item, and thank you, David. Next item on our agenda is the matter of additional resolutions, and I would like to exercise the prerogative of the chair and recognize two students from UW-La Crosse, Derek Cockler and Eric Furman, and ask them to present a resolution that they have.
Well, thank you very much, President Bradley, for allowing us the time to present to the board here. And what we're here today on is presenting to Regent Colleen Thomas a resolution commending the work of shared governance, sponsored by the UW-La Student Association. We'll read the resolution for everybody.
So, first of all, I'll say that the author of this resolution was actually Kyle O'Brien, and ironically, Colleen beat Kyle out to that regent position. So, the point in saying that is that obviously Kyle thinks very highly of Colleen, despite that fact. So here's the resolution that was written up. Whereas Governor Jim Doyle appointed Regent Colleen P. Thomas to the UW System Board of Regents in May of 2007, and whereas Regent Thomas has set a model for what shared governance should look like within the UW system, and whereas Regent Thomas spearheaded efforts to restructure United Council, the Wisconsin statewide student association, and whereas Regent Thomas has been a tremendous asset to the students of higher education in Wisconsin by promoting the foundation of the Wisconsin idea, and whereas Regent Thomas has established an outstanding reputation among her fellow students, the UW System Administration, and the state legislature, And whereas the the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse Student Association prides itself on tremendous shared governance structure and acknowledges the great things that Regent Thomas has done for shared governance within the UW system. Now therefore be it resolved that the students of the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse hereby commend and thank Regent Thomas for her commitment and dedication to promoting the student voice in Wisconsin. And the final therefore be it resolved was to share it with you today. So thank you again, Regent Thomas, and thank you to all Regents, but special commendation we felt was in order to Regent Thomas, who is on our way out this spring.
Well, Regent Thomas, I think you should go to the front and accept your... Thank you very much, President. Yes, well, thank you, Derek and Eric. Probably the best idea of the entire day. And congratulations, Regent Thomas. I think everybody here knows that there are a number of things going on that Regent Thomas is involved with, and if history is any guide, those things are going to come to a successful fruition, and we will be recognizing Regent Thomas for other accomplishments. So keep going, Colleen. We can only hope, yes. And now I'd like to call upon Regent Brent Smith to present a resolution of appreciation to UW-La Crosse.
Chancellor Gow, we want to thank you and everybody, of course, here at UW-La for hosting us the last couple days. We certainly learned again about your singing talents. I was when we were having breakfast with the students this morning, one of them referred to you as a rock star acting as a chancellor. And, but by the video yesterday, it appears that if that doesn't work out, you've got a future in the moving business, so keep at it. There's so many people who have been involved in this, but I certainly want to point out kind of the point person, and that's Carmen Wilson right over here, who's done a terrific job planning and working the last couple days. What I think is obvious in these last 2 days, I hope to all the Regents and all the system and everybody, all our visitors, is what a special place UW-L is, I know, for the people who are here on an everyday basis, and also what a special role UW-L has within this community. So, let me read the resolution. Whereas the members of the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin system are pleased to see UW-La Crosse's commitment to progress and growth as demonstrated through the campus's presentations and reports. Whereas UW-La Crosse is dedicated to contributing to the scholarly, social, and cultural welfare of our state through its nationally recognized academic programs. And whereas UW-La Crosse has demonstrated its commitment to its motto, Mens Corpus, I think that's, may have that pronounced right, mind and body, by launching the most ambitious fundraising appeal in the campus's storied 100-year history, a comprehensive fundraising campaign that supports 6 bold initiatives, including the construction, as we've seen, of the new Veterans Memorial Field Sports Complex and the Centennial Hall, a new academic building. And whereas UW-La Crosse's academic profile for incoming freshmen consistently ranks first among comprehensive universities in our system based on ACT and ranking, and in addition, the university's retention rate, some of the numbers we talked about, of 87% and the graduation rate of 63.3% are second only to Madison in our system. And whereas UW-La Crosse's student athletes have captured 22 national championships and numerous conference titles since 2001 and boast an average GPA that is the highest in the Wisconsin Intercollegiate Athletic Conference and above that of the entire student body. And whereas UW-La Crosse's faculty and staff under the leadership of Chancellor Gow and his executive team have raised the campus to a level of preeminence among public comprehensive universities in the Midwest, illustrated by its #2 ranking among public universities that offer bachelor's and master's degrees in the Midwest by U.S. News and World Report, and #39 ranking among public colleges nationwide in the most recent listing of Kiplinger's 100. And whereas the emergence of regional and global economies powered by scientific and creative discovery, new technology, and professional expertise demands well-educated and highly trained men and women of broad experience and deep character, be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin system extends its deep appreciation to the staff, faculty, and students of UW-La Crosse for their efforts in supporting the mission of the UW system and for hosting this productive 2000 December 8th meeting.
Thank you very much. It's so fitting that comes from Regent Brent Smith, who has just been a staunch supporter of UWL and the La Crosse community, and somebody that is just so committed to higher education, not only in this region, but as you know, as you all are, statewide. And so it's a real honor, Brent, to get that from you. And the truth be told, I don't know that we would be sitting here today were it not for the fact that when I started in February of '07 and we got to know one another and did some of the other visits, and he said, you know, we got to get the meeting in La Crosse, come on, and want to show off what we have here. And so we said, absolutely. So thank you for suggesting that. This is really, I know other chancellors will agree, it's such a privilege to have everybody here and to have the opportunity to just talk about what you do, and really, I hope you saw our people put their best foot forward, as it were, and I'm just so proud. I think other chancellors would understand that feeling. It kind of feels like you're the end of a football game and you say, gee, it'd be nice to score a touchdown, and then you sit on the bench and your team takes that ball all the way down to the 1 yard line, and they call a timeout. And then they say, okay, Joe, yeah, come here, come in here. And then they block a nice big gap there, and you just walk across with the ball, and you get to be the one that gets this applause here. But I don't really feel that that's me. And I'm so delighted that you mentioned Carmen Wilson, who is such an extraordinary person, because I think I was delighted that she got to do a little on campus climate, is somebody that's now working in the Chancellor's office, but is a very accomplished psychology professor and researcher and one of our most popular teachers, former chair of the Faculty Senate, you know, somebody that's just completely integrated into the fabric of the university. And so when it came time for me to say, who do I want to work very closely with, I said, that's somebody that can get things done, and it's just a pleasure to work with, and she's the one that really made all this happen. So thank you so much, and I'd be delighted if you showed your appreciation. And I will confess that the talent that I do have is knowing who can get the ball down the field and kind of getting out of their way. And so we got Carmen, and then there are two other key people on this triumvirate that made this happen. And Penny Teat from continuing education, she had to go. Oh, well, we'll give her our thanks. Somebody used to be on the Convention and Tourism Bureau here in town, and so is that expert on bringing groups in and making sure all the logistics are, you know, and there's a lot to do there. And then the other person, which I think, I want to say to the chancellors now, you hold your ears, because you don't want to hear, this is the guy who put those videos together. And when we sat down, you know, again, when you do these kind of things, you bring the team together, and I come in and go, wouldn't it be nice if we did something a little different than just some PowerPoint and so on, and could that happen? And he said, sure, I think I can give you something that might resonate more emotionally. And so I hope you don't want to hire him away, because this is a very, very talented man who leads our educational media activities, and literally the man behind the curtain, and you need to come out here, Jim Jorstad. So that's who did all that artistry there. It is no exaggeration to say, of all the things we've done while you're here, I think the thing you keep talking about are the videos that Jim did, and so that was just successful beyond our wildest dreams. And there's a whole host of other people, and I'm going to write a message to the campus later today to thank all of them. But, you know, there's a lot of, Chartwell's, the food service folks that did such a great job with the reception and the refreshments and so on. And some of that was donated just out of goodwill, and their wonderful staff. And then people who make, I don't know whether this has dawned on you, but last night we were here playing music, and this wasn't all here, and it was here yesterday morning. So they had to come in, our crew in the Cartwright Center, led by Larry Ringenberg and Bev Kratt, and there's one guy in particular, and I just know him as Big Russ, who is always so kind when we need chairs and so on, and just to move all this around. I'm very impressed at how smooth that all came off, so I'll make sure I thank them. And, you know, the university, I hope that when you're driving home you think, UW-La Crosse, you know, that's a pretty good little university there. You know, I don't want to brag on it too much, but I think we're doing a lot of things well, and that's because, as you would say on your campuses, it's your talented and dedicated faculty, staff, and students. And I hope that you did have some chance to interact with those folks while you were here. And the students are just so extraordinary, and we just saw that a moment ago. They told me they were going to do that, and I just said, that's outstanding to recognize Colleen. And when you have students like that, I think you got it all. And so we feel so fortunate to have our student leadership. And actually, the bar's set very high, and preceding Derek, I can see over there Fred Ludwig, who was the former Student Association president and now works for Congressman Kine, and it's great to have you back. And you certainly, I think others would say, when you get a tradition of excellence in student leadership, it just keeps going. And you'll get real comfortable seeing our students at your meetings, because they do like to come. And Kyle's there on the web, and we know he'll be back and at it. So it's such a privilege to have that. In closing, I will say I hope that you remember a lot of things about your visit here, and maybe it's the reception and Regent Bartel's wonderful piano, and we got to do more of that. And, yeah. And those songs, that's pretty much off the cuff, and he's that good. I mean, we were standing up there, and they said, we do this in key of D, and he said, gee, I guess I've done it before in A flat, but maybe I can make it, and I'm, whoa, you know, this is very impressive musicianship. So, but you might remember that. You, of course, you'll remember those wonderful videos. You might remember how cold it is in this room. You might remember a lot of things, but I hope that you remember the Audrey Chavez story, because that's just something I think we need to think about, the work that we do and what it's all about. And I think she embodies that, and it's not unique to UWL, but just the focus on students and the things that they struggle with. And these are going to be some hard times, but that does provide some energy to get through them. So thanks so much. I know that Jeff and Brent are our Regent buddies formally, but I think the support and kindness that you've shown to our campus, and to me personally, I think of all of you as our Regent buddies, and appreciate that, and certainly Kevin and the UW staff, and I can look around the room and see folks that we talk to each other probably daily on a lot of issues, and sometimes they probably don't want to get those phone calls because they have enough going on there in Van Nuys, but we are just so grateful for all that you do for us to keep this university moving forward and the future bright, even in the face of some pretty significant challenges. So it's a pleasure to see you in La Crosse. I hope it doesn't take 8 years again, but I know I have some other chancellors who want to see you too, and we look forward to that. So thanks so much for coming, and safe travels and happy holidays.
Thank you, Chancellor Gao. Are there any communications, petitions, or memorials for us to consider? Any unfinished business? If not, we'll take a 10